Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to Creative Mornings for this opportunity, and thank you all for being here on a Friday morning. I'm gonna, hope that you enjoy the conversation as much as the bagels. Lil's Bagels is one of those local businesses that the owners and the employees are totally ingrained in our community and step up to help whenever they can. And so we'd like to return that favor, and hopefully you'll continue to support them in the future. All right, so I don't usually do this when I talk. I'm going to talk about myself for a little while, not a long while, but kind of lay the foundation for my story and how I ended up in my work. I grew up here in Covington, and so did my parents independently and then together, and their parents and their parents. So I'm fourth generation Covington, maybe fifth. I think I'm fifth. I should know that. And my parents bought a house in 1975. It was in the old Seminary Square neighborhood on West 11th. It was 7 apartments, and it cost them $7,000. So they started in 1975, room by room, putting that house back together. And so myself and my 3 brothers grew up in an ongoing construction site. And today in 2018, they're still working on that house. But it's worth a whole lot more than $7,000, so I give them credit for that. And I think that shaped my worldview more than I probably recognized until I was even thinking about this talk. Just that amount of passion for the built environment, the structure, the history, the integrity, that ended up becoming a passion that I share as well. And so I went to a little high school called Covington Latin School. It was less than a block from where I grew up. So I walked every day to school. We didn't have a gym, so I played soccer. We ran up and down Madison Avenue. But if you're familiar with that school, it actually doesn't really serve Covington people. I was the only person in my class who was from Covington. And 1 or 2 here or there. Janet's got a kid there who also has the ability to walk, and that's great. But when I moved into that school from the Covington Public Schools, I found out that everybody thought Covington was terrible. And I was like, what? I love this place. What are you talking about? But the perception was that Covington was dirty, Covington was dangerous. They went to that school in spite of it being in Covington, not because it was in Covington. And it really shaped how I saw, but my confidence around my own community, how I understood my relationship to that place. And so my mantra became, I have to get out of here. I've got to go. My future is in a big city. And so started to work on that. Because it's a unique school. I graduated when I was 16, and as hard as I tried to move to Chicago, you really can't do that when you're 16 without money or permission. So I ended up moving to Lexington and going to UK for my undergraduate degree. But as soon as I finished that, I went to a school in New York called the New School, if anybody's familiar with it. I loved it there. I began to really grow and to understand what was important to me there, and I studied urban policy. And started to see cities differently, started to see cities as a puzzle that we can solve and that we can improve incrementally. And it's not really up to the big developers to solve our problems, it's up to us to solve our problems. And so as I spent 10 years away from Covington, I grew more and more fond of Covington. Every time I'd come back, I would just see this limitless potential. How is it that we have these beautiful buildings and these beautiful streets and this wonderful sense of community, and it is how it is. What is happening here? What is the problem? And so that's a long story short, but it comes back up of kind of how I came back to Covington in 2010 and started as at the time, Renaissance manager, and then later executive director of Renaissance Covington. And that difference is only a matter of our program was originally a city government program, but we transitioned it out to be an independent nonprofit. So since then, since I moved back, I got married to my wife and I, and she runs a study abroad, well, she works at NKU and has a study abroad program there, so it's pretty cool. I get to be a chaperone. And we opened a bar in 2012. It was called Pike Street Lounge. We really focused on music and arts and building community there. It was kind of one of those things that, everybody's like, it would be so cool to own a bar. It's really not. There's lots of cool things about it, but there's also lots of not cool things about it. We had a lot of fun though. We built a lot of community there as well. We worked really hard, and I'm glad we did it, but I wouldn't do it again. And then the last thing about the book, I'll kind of tell that story. In 2011, a guy named Richard Hunt, who owns Roebling Point Books and Coffee. Has anyone ever been there? If not, you should stop on your way out. He and I met, and we started to become friends. And this weird event called the Queen City Queens Alley Cat Race. Is anybody here for that? It was a bike race. And it was for women, but men could participate if they dressed up like women. And you went to all these different places and you got points, and the person with the most points won. And that's where Richard and I decided to do it together. And I showed up, and he was dressed like a woman, and he pulls out his tandem bike. So we did the entire race on tandem. He later got the award for the ugliest woman, but we became friends then. And so the story of Walking Cincinnati starts there, and it culminates a couple years later when he says, I want you to write this book. Essentially, that's it. There was no big plan. There was no big proposal. It was a relationship that started that. And he said, oh, and by the way, I want your co-author to be Danny Corman. And I was like, that's awesome. I know Danny Corman. He used to own Park and Vine, if you all aren't familiar with him, and was really a leader in some of the sustainability efforts in Cincinnati. So we started working on that, I don't know, in 2012, something like that. That was published in 2015, and our second edition manuscript was due last week. I'm about halfway done. But the goal is to get that out for the holidays this year. And it's been incredible to go back on these routes from 2014 to 2018 and look at how our walkable communities have 100% progressed. Everyone has more storefronts, more businesses, more people, more art. It is true that walkable communities are on the rise, there's no question, and it's wonderful to see those neighborhoods evolve. So that's the story of Walking Cincinnati. So Renaissance Covington, we are a small nonprofit, and when I say small, I mean I'm the only full-time employee. We have two wonderful part-time employees who are here. We have a contract employee, we have a couple wily interns, and we have a really wonderful volunteer base through our boards and our committees who make this work happen. The essence of Renaissance Covington is driven by a national entity called Main Street America, which is a program that was developed in the 1970s out of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and the concept being fairly simple that we can't only regulate our historic buildings, we have to use them, we have to activate them in order to save them. So it's sort of the second tier strategy to historic preservation, and there are over 2,000 organizations like Renaissance Covington and other downtowns, some very small, some larger, who also were facing high vacancy, demolition by neglect, some of these issues in their historic downtowns, as a result of suburbanization and things like that really impacted our communities. In Kentucky, there are 32 Main Street organizations, ranging from Shelbyville to Frankfort to Bardstown to Pineville, Pikeville. So we come together all the time and kind of learn from each other about what's going on in Kentucky. And then here's our local one, Renaissance Covington. So a day in the life of Renaissance Covington is pretty interesting. We have this small little office. We work right next to each other. We work hard. We laugh hard. But we do things like we do events. We host community meetings. We stay connected. Sometimes we suit up and we go and sit in these boardrooms. Sometimes we go and we, move rocks from one side of the field to another for purpose, but literally. And so our work is driven, though, through our boards and our committees, and that is a group of people who are giving their time every week, every month, in order to say, this is how we want to move our community forward. And so, like I said, it's not just us. I've got some board members and former board members in the room. Anyone? Austin, Shannon, Aaron, you guys seriously? Oh, it's good. Oh, raise your hand. I didn't finish my sentence. My bad. So in 2015, National Main Street gave us this really cool award, and I think this video shows quite a bit about what we were doing.
I recall memories of parades in downtown. It was packed with people. You would be shocked how rapidly our downtown declined.
From a young age, we had a lot of issues around poverty and crime. There were names like Covington that were used. You weren't proud to be from Covington. The good news is I think that's really, really changed. We had a reputation issue, and so starting to embrace who we are and celebrate it was one of those first things where Main Street could really, really help with that.
It's helped shape our board so that we could find people that had talents and interests in specific areas based on the 4 points.
So it doesn't have to be I'm passionate about Main Street, but I'm passionate about bikes, I'm passionate about art, I'm passionate about architecture, and putting them in a room, and that's where kind of the magic happens.
What's really unique about Covington is we have such a concentration of historic building stock. So much is intact from the late 1800s.
The Renaissance group has brought focus to the fact that, yes, these are assets.
They just opened new apartments called the Boone Block. They really used their imagination to figure out how to turn a building that had been many different things over a century into a 3-level living.
The hotel used to be Coppen's department store. And when you go inside, they still have displays of things that they would have had at the department store.
The idea of a 114-room boutique hotel in the middle of Covington 4 or 5 years ago was like nutty.
These places were designed successfully because they're able 120 years later to be transitioned from a department store into a boutique hotel.
Giving it this grandeur of an urban, modern hotel while still leaving much of the exterior intact so you can still really see its history.
I think there's a number of benchmarks that Renaissance Covington will look back on and say those were crucial moments, those were great moments. Separating from the city and becoming a standalone 501c3 was huge.
There were a lot of things that we wanted to do that were more risk-taking and sort of creative and out there, and being independent would allow us to do that.
It has a more personal feel, I believe. People can walk in the door, they don't feel like they're going to a governmental agency, they're going to see Katie or they're going to see Renaissance.
I think the Parklet initiative last year branded Covington as being unique.
Curbed, which was the name of the Parklet program, was really, making a statement about look what you can do in the size of a parking space.
And so it was enabled people to be engaged with each other and be on the street.
But then also took away a parking space, and then of course brought all sorts of people to the table to talk about what is the value of that, and on both sides.
Losing those parking places was not a big deal in comparison to the amount of people that it brought downtown.
We're very lucky in Covington to have a number of incubators and accelerators. When those sorts of things are happening, sort of naturally and independently, we're constantly trying to harness those into public events. We really wanted to home grow entrepreneurship. One of the ways that we tried to do that was through pop-ups.
It also then introduces these entrepreneurs to our community. So we've had several of them go on and lease space on a more permanent basis.
To see the number of people walking in Covington, young people, I have not seen that since the 60s. So excited.
Covington's reputation, it's suffered a lot for a really long time, and I think today, when people think about Covington, they think about something completely different. They think about a place where cool things are going on, their new businesses are opening, there are great events, and it's a place to be. That's a pretty cool video. That was, we won an award last year from Main Street America. It's one of the top programs in the country. And they came and they did that video, and they showed it on a big stage in Pittsburgh last year, and we went up and received it. And several folks who were there know this story, but it still cracks me up because the amount of people who were coming up to me afterwards saying they wanted to come to Covington for vacation. It was like, well, all right, maybe we oversold it a little bit. But then we did end up becoming a top destination for spring break this year. So, you know, that was equally as sort of strange. But so talking about our work and how we build community, I wanted to emphasize here the word build because it is an action. And, you know, and when you're building community, when you're doing this work, there's a humbleness to it. It's not like, okay, so we have this wonderful award and we're doing great, and now we're going to hire somebody to go out and mulch the tree wells. It's really, you have to navigate both sides of that. Megan, who runs our farmers market, will be writing grants on Friday for tens of thousands of dollars and then show up Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning and haul tents. You know, so it's really that never being too proud or too big to understand that sometimes your role is to you know, move dirt around. And that's what has made us so successful, in my opinion, is just doing stuff. We've taken a lot of risks, we've tried new things, we've failed, and we've succeeded. But there's no shortage of showing up and making things happen that has led us to where we are. Some examples, we really understand that small independent businesses are the essence of place in our community. This is who's shaping what our physical space looks like and what our experience looks like. So things like Shop Small Saturday. We did an exhibit actually that had been done in OTR called Look Here, where we did 50 historic signs in the context of where they were. So you could see this is what it looked like in 1900, and then look past and see this is what it looks like in 2018. We did 50 of those to recognize the 50th anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act. We plant flowers in the flower pots. We use food through our farmers market. We just did a farmers market to table dinner. That is a 36-week event, and there's an emphasis on the arts there. There's an emphasis on you're not just coming here to shop and leave. We will not be having any sensors that allow you to pay from your phone based on the price of your food. With that, you have to talk to the farmers. You talk to each other. Through pride, community pride. This is, I love the Cov. That was our mantra from the start. Let's make this into a part of, the colloquial habits of our community. Like, let's express love the Cov over and over through hashtags, through murals, through T-shirts, through stickers. And then we do all sorts of events that are free and open to the public to showcase the character of our community. You can see here the background photo is one of our parklets. Many of you may remember when we had those parklets here. That was a design build competition, and that really was a large scale opportunity to get people to understand the talent in our region, and also to see Covington in a different way. And like it said in the video, it really opened the conversation about parking. For any of you who do downtown revitalization work, it's like one of the most contentious words out there, unbelievably. It's like this battle between bike lanes and parking and people that is strange but always happening. We worked with the American Sign Museum and some others on a project called CoSign to help small business owners get new signs. And then most recently, there was a vacant lot that we transformed into Madhatter Park. And when I'm thinking about this audience as having a number of creative professionals, this park was done with a lot of labor, but it was also done with a lot of input from creative professionals, from Hub and Weber Architects, from MKSK Urban Design, from people coming to the table, artists, Ashley Shoemaker, if she's here, and saying, this is I can contribute my creative talent to our community with these ideas, and then we're going to draw it, we're going to design it, and then we're going to go out and we're going to build it, and then we're going to throw a party. It's really that simple, but without that creative perspective at the table and professional perspective at the table, the project would not matter. It's about all of us working together at improving something, not just the people who, get paid to do it. And I'll talk about this project for one more second. This was really cool because the lot was owned by the community college. It's next door to a homeless shelter and next door to the library. And Lee's Chicken really could care less, but the library, the emergency shelter, Gateway Community College, and Renaissance Covington all partnered on this. And so that's a really cool partnership because we were able to do a mural on the emergency shelter, which really changes the perception of that building there. And then the library has designed a program where you can check out Nerf balls, croquet, bocce, all sorts of games with your library card in order to bring them over and play in this now accessible, quasi-public green space that before just seemed like a dirty, empty space that you weren't supposed to be in. So that's called Madhatter Park. Go check it out if you get a chance. It's been a really fun project to execute. So all of this to say, what is actually the goal of all of this work, and why does it matter? And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is incrementally change our community and encourage productive growth. And by productive, I mean long-term sustainable growth, so that 10 years from now, we don't have one major developer or one major business owner who says, the incentives are better in Cincinnati, I'm going to go over there, and then everything collapses, right? So if we're all working together incrementally over time, then we create this like mesh net that is secure, and it doesn't give the power to the person with the most jobs or the most money. It gives the power to the community. So that's what we're trying to do by building these partnerships and by thinking about space and by changing the narrative around Covington. So the question being, okay, so how can you all do this? Or what does it look like? Or how do you start if this is something that's interesting? And I have step one is see your relationship with place differently. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes we navigate our cities or our communities and we see a problem and it doesn't even matter, we just kind of pass by it. But when you start to look at all of your physical environment, all of that public space as opportunity to improve or to be a part of or to leave your mark on, that's when the ideas start to come. when I was 16 and running up and down Madison Avenue, I wasn't really thinking anything except I hate running. But now, I can't go to a city without looking at, the rhythm of the parking meters and the trash cans and how walkable it feels and all of that kind of stuff. So as you start to look at those public spaces differently, then it opens the doors to step 2, which is, you don't have to be a downtown revitalization specialist. You have strengths, and if you have passion, then you have power. And so that doesn't, that may be working with your neighborhood organization or working with a downtown group or working with anybody, but using arts to make, and creativity to solve problems differently and to make change. And that would be do something. I mean, I love the mantra that we started with. We can be as talented as you want, but it doesn't matter if you don't get out and do something. So I'm going to transition into just a couple examples of work that isn't ours, but just food for thought about how we can all use creativity to send a message. It may be something simple like to brighten somebody's day. It may be political. It may be it may be social. For example, down here, somebody has created a basketball line to encourage not littering, right? So reminding people that there's a trash can there. And, there's some gray lines on what's legal and what's not legal that I'm showing here. But, if you go with temporary materials, that tends to be more on the legal side. Chalk, spray chalk, things like that. Yarn bombs. I have not heard of anybody ever getting arrested for yarn bombing. So if there's any examples of that being false, let me know. And then obviously the more political stuff where some other examples of playfulness, of chalk, of inclusion. So, thinking about things in Spanish and in English. One of the things that we did at Madhatter Park was a project that we really thought about how we can make it feel very inclusive, and some of that included working with the guys in the program at the emergency shelter who helped us build it. So from the beginning, it was intended to be a place for people from the shelter and from the community to all be together. We put a Northern Kentucky Pride table in there saying this is a safe space, this is an inclusive space for our LGBT community. So sometimes you can use your physical space to make commentary subliminally or not subliminally about inclusion as well. I think that my last comments are I don't really know what they are. All of you are here for a reason, probably because you have a passion about community, you have a creative talent, you want to be part of the people around you. This is community right here. And so I think that you're the perfect audience to go out into whatever community you have, whether it's your work or your neighborhood or where you play, and leave your mark on it. Be part of that incremental productive change, especially if it's something that is moving us positively. So I am open for questions, and thank you again for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. So the first thing I was going to say is that I paid attention not that much, I guess, before I came here today, and I totally thought I was going to hear somebody talk from the Renaissance Hotel. This is way more interesting. I got it. I was just going to be like, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the decision and the process to split away from the city and form the separate 501c3. Just
Sure.
kind of curious about,
Yeah.
when and how difficult it was and how much support you had.
That's a really good question, and we often get hotels about people looking for rooms at the Renaissance Hotel. It's not as awkward as when people think I work for the Renaissance Fair. So, you know, when we were doing our work inside City Hall, there were a number of barriers to getting the job done that became frustrating. Frustrating for our board, who was showing up because they wanted to make a difference, and frustrating for me because I was spending so much time reporting, asking again, presenting at the commission, having a politician who said, that's too risky for me, you know, I don't want to do it. And that's bureaucracy, right? The second thing was funding. Fundraising is hard when people think you're part of the government. Most people don't want to give the government much more money. And we needed more people, and I couldn't make decisions on staffing. Staffing decisions came from the commission, from the city manager, and they needed police officers, they needed firefighters. So we started a process of designing basically alternative A, alternative B, alternative C, criteria, cost, effectiveness, and said, like, listen, this is our best opportunity. We can move outside of the city, we'll save this much money. And what we did was we combined two positions, one that was vacant, and looked at every single cost from the percentage of office costs to the percentage of overhead, and said, this is the cost of our staffing right now. And then said, if we do a contract with you, we'll save you $40,000 a year, and we'll do more, and we'll make more. And so we did. We used Shannon was our lawyer. We did a bunch of contract negotiation, and we settled in 2015 and moved out. And you know, in that year, our annual budget went from overhead being covered plus maybe $40,000 to $350,000 in the next year, just based on grants and fundraising opportunities. So it's challenging. I don't have somebody who changes the toilet paper, or somebody, or an HR department, or a legal department. You know, we're very scrappy. We have to make it work. I don't have benefits like I used to, but we have more fun, and we get more done, and we're more effective. And I think there's nobody that questions that, and in fact, the politicians like not having to have an opinion on our work sometimes. They like not having to be asked or be held responsible when we do things like paint a parking lot pink, you know. So. Other questions?
What do you feel like that was the first thing that you did that made you think, okay, I'm community-minded, or I think I have something to offer in this arena?
That's, gosh, I moved back. That was the first thing. I started thinking about my role in the world differently. My role in the world being more about coming home and being part of home versus, you know, being and not making much of a difference, or making a difference in some other person's home. Yeah.
You talked about going away in order to learn the value of coming back. How do you convince people to stay? The young people who are creative-minded, who are maybe thinking the same way you were in that situation. How do you convince them to either stay or come back?
You know, I wouldn't necessarily discourage people from leaving and coming back. I think there's value in that sometimes, but it is the ecosystem of many different elements. You know, a lot of people see entrepreneurship, or, you know, it's job opportunity for a lot of people. What are my job opportunities? What are my prospects here? You know, and can I do my own thing? Can I dream my own thing? Or can I work maybe in a corporation and have that life here? I may not have mentioned this, but my dad's the mayor of Covington, which is pretty funny, and it didn't happen until 2016, so I swear I didn't get hired as a nepotistic favor. But he always says, buy Covington, get Cincinnati for free, which I appreciate in terms of what that means for us. You know, the riverfront development in Cincinnati, the relationship from that to here that you have. So the job prospects are just so important, but also the culture, and that's how we lead. We use culture to drive economic vitality, not necessarily incentives or other economic development tools. The age-old question in economic development is it housing? You need residents to attract business. You need business to attract residents. Which comes first, chicken or the egg? And so our proposition is it's culture and it's community that comes first. And sometimes you have to fabricate it through pop-ups and through temporary activations and events, but then you build that community, and that's when your residents and your businesses start to show up. So I really think there's the combination of can I get a job that I want, or can I make my business work here, and is there a community I can be a part of?
Thanks for your talk. It was really great. And I wondered if there are other community organizations in the city that you learn from or partner with, like similar grassroots efforts that they're doing in different neighborhoods?
Yeah, for sure. Walnut Hills Redevelopment Foundation. I've looked to them for quite a while. Price Hill will. The Hale Foundation is a big funder of ours, and I have enjoyed seeing the talent that they bring out of people's liberty. And oftentimes somebody does something really cool at People's Liberty, and I'm like, now let's do something cool just like that here in Covington. So they've been a good resource, like an incubator of creative placemaking for us. In our own community, we have the Center for Great Neighborhoods, who is more residential neighborhood based. And then Bellevue has a Bellevue Main Street program. And Fairfield Avenue is a lovely place to be because of some of their work. Yeah, those would be some of my top. Yes. Hi.
So I'm just curious if, the people you talk to, and so many people you meet, like I have a friend that likes to go out and come over here in Covington because she can smoke still in some of the bars. So, what do you think brings people from across the river over here if they don't already live here?
I think it's hard to talk about from a entirety of Cincinnati. And I don't want to misstep too much here, but I think if you're looking at the banks, for example, for the most part, when you go into one of those places, you don't know your bartender, you don't know the person at the end of the bar, you don't have that connection. It's kind of sterile, and so I think that the thing that the people who choose Covington over and over again choose it is because of the relationships and because of the people and because it's down to earth and it's not super contrived by an outside party. It's just somebody who wants to do something. Yeah, that kind of close-knit community. It's a little bit cheaper. The parking's easier. Yeah.
Main Street organizations have an easy sell with economic development and the value of that. And you talked about this sort of mesh fabric that you can build and kind of protect economically. But I'm really interested in health in cities and what do spaces, public spaces mean for mental and physical health of people. You have a really progressive health department in Northern Kentucky Health Department. I'm wondering if do you collaborate with them, or how do you think about your work in the context of the health of the community?
Yeah. Do you say progressive or regressive?
Well, more progressive than some
Okay.
nearby.
I mean, it's going to be relative across, different areas of the health department. So, our farmers market, there's a lot of intentionality there around sustainability workshops, free yoga with mats, the health department partners with us there too. Megan's right behind you. She does all this work, so I feel like I'm not taking credit for it. But being very intentional about going and understanding that every farmer is growing what they're saying they're growing, that it's all being locally produced, and then connecting the dots with like the health department and other organizations that facilitate WIC and SNAP. And then we also have a grant for double dollars, so we're the only market in Kenton County where you can bring in a SNAP voucher and get it doubled up to $20. So within our program, we think about that. We do an event called Covington Outdoors Weekend, which is 15 events that are kind of free and open to the public that encourage biking, walking, running. There was a beer run that was probably not healthy for anybody involved. And then with that, we partner with the health department on Northern Kentucky Pride. So through Renaissance, Bonnie and I run the Pride Festival and the parade, and so we do, HIV testing there. So we have some connections, through that. But I guess as we see, we understand that to build community and attract people. People want healthy lifestyle, people want to be healthy, or people could use resources to be healthy. And so it's not a high level thing we work on, but we do sort of sprinkle it throughout.
Every once in a while when we drive around, we find some hidden gems. Like, we love Wonder Bar, for example.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Do you have a couple of recommendations of anything that are hidden gems that you just wouldn't know? Not really.
Well, gosh, and it's hard to know. I mean, not living here, living across the river.
But then again, if you tell us, then it's not.
Well, I'll go with 2 places you should go shopping for really cute things. Grainwell. Have you heard of Grainwell? They do it's 3 sisters, and they do these woodworking and place-based stuff and really great decor and cute stuff. And then Hansy, they do paper, cards, clothes, really great, locally made, entrepreneurial hustle sorts of things. So those are little gems for if you want to get somebody a really unique gift and support our retail culture in Covington. Frank's Old Town?
I love Frank's.
Old Town Cafe? Or Old Town Tavern? Frank's Men's Shop? This is on video. I should be careful. I love the Hannaford, but it's kind of become a problem. It's right across the street from our office, so it's like the Renaissance Covington Annex, and but that's a really fun bar. I love Wonder Bar. Can't argue with that. Amerasia, Roebling Point Books and coffee, if you haven't done that, and of course here at Smoke Justice. If you didn't know, there's a whole restaurant over there, and then downstairs there's this game room. It's really awesome. And can you still pour your own beer down there? Yeah. So you get to pour your own beer. All right, that was a hard question. Next question.
You talked about some of the pop-up stuff and the creative placemaking that you did. A couple that sounded really interesting to me was that the exhibit that you mentioned with showcasing what it kind of looked like in the 1900s today. What are some of the other ones that you've done that you were really proud of?
So there was a reference to it. I will. This is where we really became aware of the power of creative placemaking, which was this photo up here with all of the colors. That was the Mad Lot. It was a parking lot that was really dark and dank and felt kind of unsafe, and it had this beautiful mural there, but that was sort of it. Everything else looked a little rough and like you weren't supposed to be there. So we worked with some folks at MKSK who came up with this design where they took the themes out of the 2 murals, you can't see the other one, to paint the surface of the parking lot. And we built a stage out of pallets, and we built planters out of plywood, and we strung lights, and we had a $1,000 budget. We got a grant, and we did all of this with donations and as little as we could, and it was called the Mad Lot, and it transformed that space. We did events there. Guerrilla Cinemas came in and showed movies. We did music. We did a weekday farmers market, and took a place that was nothing into something. And sometimes people like to connect the dots directly. I would say it's a little more like this, but after that, Braxton moved in, and Braxton loved that parking lot. They saw it as like a beer garden for them, that they didn't have to do anything. And then after Braxton came in, obviously a lot more people started coming downtown, and then that ended up, now it's 108 residential units, so now it's a new development. So that project was the first time we said we're going to take a public space that nobody cares about, we're going to do something very bold, and I had no idea how it was going to go, you know. And unlike the running of the goats, which did not go well, this did go well.
One more question, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit. Covington and Northern Kentucky in general are definitely in a unique situation with Cincinnati and their relationship. I mean, we are one big community, but we're divided not only by a river, but also government lines, state lines. What opportunities are there to, one, work with Cincinnati and create that larger community feel, but then how do you also create an identity for Covington or for Northern Kentucky? How do you work with other, Newport, Bellevue, Ludlow? How do you work with those cities to really kind of say, okay, Northern Kentucky is a place in and of itself? Because you have to answer back to Frankfurt, which is totally different. Right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have government now, but,
Yeah.
and I've studied the area, so
Yeah.
it's a unique dynamic. Can you just talk about that one?
Yeah, there were a lot of questions in one, but I'll try to say it back as in terms of how do we both work together across the river and then across the south bank of the river while also maintaining a unique identity or a distinct identity. Yeah, I think there's a lot of answers to that, and I'll just focus on a couple. One that I think is really interesting and not really being done and may reflect back on the health department a little bit too is I love Cincinnati's goals around solar and renewable energy and what they want to do to move the needle on their carbon footprint. But they can't do it without us, you know, like we really all need to be in that together. It's hard to move a needle in a river valley on pollutants without the other half of the river valley participating. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on that, on public transit, on connectivity, on some of those bigger, higher level issues. I think that the nature of the uniqueness is that we're thinking about it from within, about what is our character. So it's not always intuitive to say that we would, be looking at working with Cincinnati to define ourselves. But our riverfront is another one. That's a big topic. Oftentimes I've seen a couple drawings of potential Covington riverfront development projects, and they look like Smale Park light. And I think that our opportunity there is to be for people to be at Smale Park, look across the river and say, I want to go there. That looks cool. But it's not what I'm standing in, and vice versa. To stand on the Covington side and say, like, I love this creative, interesting space, whatever it may be, but I also want to go play at Smale Park because those swings are fun. So I think those are some of the areas. As far as the Northern Kentucky river cities, it's tough. Northern Kentucky is tough. There are 35 cities, 35 governments, 3 counties, a bunch of regional stuff. It's how do we, different values. The only thing I'll say right now is that I'm really mad at Newport for that stupid roundabout coming into Covington because it makes it really not walkable, which is, as the bigger city in this case, a loss for them, that we will no longer want to walk to Newport, but yeah, are we done?